He's never fought us. Not us united.
Oh! I can so see that. That's it. Welcome to 92 Caves, the premier podcast of the Comics League Network, where we talk about all things comic books and the comic book industry. Like today's topic, why is the comic book industry struggling? So before we get into it, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. So I'm Jared, and I'm here with JHEAT. What's up, brother?
What's up?
So today we're talking, again, like I said before, we're talking about why the comic book industry is struggling. And there are a lot of reasons for this. My chief reason is an over-reliance on events.
Well, by that logic, we've been going through event fatigue for the past 20 years.
True.
But I think that's a precedent. Okay, you know what? Art imitating life, live, let live, I'll say it. Shifting trends currently. There has been a decline in the appeal for what's essentially glorified LGBTQ coming of age stories. I'm just going to say it. Now, there is an audience for that. That's why we have anime, manga, and indies. There is an audience for that. However, with American comics, specifically the big two, you can't cram everything trying to appease everyone. You have these IPs, you have fan expectations, stick to it. Now, if you're going indie, doing your own thing, by all means, live, let live, go nuts. Hell, rip off Krakoa for all I care.
Man, that would be better than an indie book. But here's the thing, though. They could sell LGBTQ coming-of-age stories because they have plenty of awesome characters like Midnight or Apollo, Dreamer. They have plenty of characters.
But they're not popular enough. That's the thing.
They would be if DC and Marvel did more with them.
But why go out of your way to prop up a C or D-list character when all you have to do is a mantle swap of someone already established or has a strong IP and call it a day? It's lazy hack writing.
It is. And you know what's kind of funny? A certain Marvel writer that you and I were just talking about posted on Twitter that the reason why they do all these swaps and stuff is because the other characters, it's because the other characters aren't like big enough to get that audience. So immediately my response is, so basically what you're saying is that you're too lazy to actually write to actually put in the work to develop these characters. Is that what you're saying?
Though I would put in the work, I will play devil's advocate that a lot of established LGBT characters are either debuting characters from TV series who were canonized for synergy, or parts of acquisition with other comics and labels such as Wildstorm, Charleston Comics, stuff like that. So a lot of the LGBTQ characters are either acquisitions or derivative of other cis straight characters like Batwoman. So I will play devil's advocate, but still.
But those characters have had the work put into them to the point where they are like, I mean, obviously not as iconic as like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman.
But they're appealing.
They're appealing. Exactly. They are appealing. And if DC did more with those characters and here's the key part here, talented people writing these characters, like even the Batwoman show, that could have been a big push for Batwoman, but they put not talented people in there, and we all know what happened.
And that version of Kate Kane is just a gender-bent Bruce Wayne. I'll call for what it is. Mm-hmm. I'll say it. Say what you will. Yes, it did break the bat embargo. First of all, it was a loophole. It didn't officially break the bat embargo for about another 4 or 5 years. We're just now trying to break out of that with Paul Dini and with Paul Dini's Cape Crusader on Amazon. So the bat embargo officially was debunked, was just officially abolished. I would say about 2-3 years ago but anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. We could probably take this out in post, but
no, it's fine. I'm going to keep it in because it is important.
But I will say this: every character has a chance to shine. Now, are you going to get as big as the Trinity? No, because you're going as far back as the Golden Age it's
going to take years for you to get this character to be at the level of Superman, but you can at least get them on the same level as like maybe some other like Justice League members. Maybe
look at Take World War Saga, for example. Actually did something with Apollo and Midnighter, literally since Flashpoint. I would argue their New 52 series, but come on. Those versions of Midnight Apollo, those were caricatures. Let's just call it for what it is. But again, they were the heart of that book. Say what you will about, Clark needed to be out of the picture to prop up John. And I'm actually doing a John Kent retrospective with Tevye in the future. I'm actually doing that. Hopefully he can go 5 minutes without referencing the Super Sons.
He will. If you're talking about John Kent, he will. All right. Yeah. We love you, Tevye. Don't ever change.
We love you. We love you. Just heckling you. But yeah, and also this is another huge problem with comics. Redundancy.
Oh yes. Oh gosh, yes. They keep doing the same damn thing over and over again. Honest, and at the same time, too, because actually it was kind of funny. Remember that period where we had like Death Metal, then 3 Jokers, then Joker War happening all at the same time. These are all stories that involved a Jokerized character.
Now, to be fair, 3 Jokers was relegated to a Black Label book. Some elements carried over, but it was.
But according to Jeff Johns, it's all canon.
A lot of that was just trying to the whole. Okay, 5G in general was just a bad idea. That was just a fucking mistake. I hate to cuss on your channel, but this needs to be said.
I'll bleep it.
5G was a mistake. Like, Dan DiDio, this isn't even the first time he ripped off Marvel, but this was definitely his last. But anyway.
The funny part is that, he wasn't ripping off Marvel, but he ripped off the part of Marvel that failed miserably.
Crashed and burned within the span of 3 years. Arguably,
why do you think they brought back? Why do you think they brought back Bruce, Steve, and Tony and Thor immediately?
2 factors. 1, Dan DiDio thought he could do it better with better creative direction, which I will applaud him. Dan DiDio has made some solid character decisions in the past. He always tried to kill off Nightwing, and he got some flack for that.
Wally West, all the characters that people like.
Well, to be fair, if you already have these upper tier characters, they're eventually going to age out of their prime. So a lot of that was done in an attempt to make Batman younger.
But here's the thing, though. They're not going to age out because you're dealing with comic books. We could just keep
They'll never do it. They'll never do it. You have to write it in such a way to where either that character is dead or physically incapable of superheroics ever again.
Which they're never going to do because Bruce Wayne Batman sells comics.
Unless you're counting Elseworld stories. But even then.
Even then, they're acting like Bruce Wayne.
But, okay. The reason I say not because of Super Sons or Damian Wayne, even though I do say a lot of that, it's just, I get you want to try new things. I applaud new things. Please. Hold on, let me show my camera for this. I really want to make this clear. I applaud new things, but you're fighting multiple fronts. You're fighting fan expectations, new status quo, and the majority of what you're doing with this new line of comics are either shelf titles or publicity stunts outright.
Because, dude, they could have done something really cool with John Kent taking over for his father.
I agree.
That had potential, but the problem is they made it a slice of life story where nothing happened for significant amounts of time, and I'm like, now in the Pity series, they're finally getting to the point of the story, him fighting Ultraman.
That, and also, you have a Comic Storian did a great video on this, so shout out to him. If we can find it, we'll probably put it in the description. But Comic Storian did a similar video where essentially he did this, the redundancy aspect of how DC Editorial were chasing headlines, hence the notion of a shelf title, and it literally bit them in the ass. You were chasing headlines, and you essentially made John Kent redundant because Clark's going to come back eventually.
Yeah, I know. They treated it like Clark's not going to come back, but even I was like, okay, I'm just biding my time.
And they specifically said Superman is by in those tabloids, not Superboy, not John Kent,
not Superman's son. A few said Superman's son, but most said Superman. That's why they wanted to. That's the headline they were going for.
But if you try to take it back or de-age John, then you're going to get the opposite. Then you're going to get backlash from certain groups.
Arguably, the backlash that you would get by de-aging John would be less than would be significantly less because it'd just be people on Twitter than they got when all this happened.
I agree. Sometimes you just got to bite the bullet and just take the heat because it's just Twitter at the end of the day. I agree.
And actually, I'm going to play a clip right now that I think is very appropriate. This is what DC should be telling these people that freak out if they DH John.
Okay, they're talking about fictional characters. Fictional characters.
Well said.
Yeah, these are not real people. Oh, but too many people on Twitter tweet like Clark and Diana and Bruce and whatever are real people, and I'm like, they are not. I love them as characters,
Yes.
of course, we all do,
and we can relate to them, but they're not real people.
So it really doesn't matter what they do to them, because ultimately it's not going to. The minute you let them affect your life and your overall mood, then you're a little obsessed.
Not to mention, you have to go into profit, appeal, brand recognition, and bottom line. If the first Super Sons animated film is to be believed, Super Sons did decent. Batman v Superman Battle of the Super Sons did decent by animated movie margins. So if they were to build it,
you know, Super Sons is profitable. You know why? They keep doing freaking Super Sons books.
It's going to be one or two things. One, especially with Flash 97, with that being with Super Sons being a cameo in that story, it's going to be one or two scenarios. One, they retcon it to where Son of Kal-El was the John of Earth 3, or two, they would never have the balls to do either of these. Or two, they're gonna try to skew the story to where in the Flash book, Irie, Jay, or one of the twins convinces John to actually stay and support Damian instead of going across the galaxy with Jor-El. That way you have a time variant of younger John, while the John that gets aged up is still shelved and in the Injustice or whatever Earth he ends up with at the end of the Pity series.
I sincerely think they're going to keep him in the Injustice Earth. They're going to leave him there.
Like what Stargirl did with the Legion.
And he'll be a character in like Injustice 3 if that ever freaking comes out. And then so there you go. That's the way you fix this. Because you can still have John stories, but you can also have the Super Son that people want. My other problem with like the mainstream comic book industry is that they keep self-sabotaging themselves. And again, it goes into what we were saying here, but the example I always use, is with the Superman and Wonder Woman title from the New 52. Because here's why.
I knew this was coming.
This is backed up by Charles Soule and Tony S. Daniel. So that series sold like over 100,000 copies. Now, JHEAT, how often does a Superman title sell on over 100,000 copies?
Current market or early or 2010s market?
Both. Let's do both.
2010s market. This was right when the New 52 kicked off. You would see 100,000 with like Spawn and Omega Red, Marvel when the MCU.
I'm saying Superman titles.
Okay, if you're talking about Superman specifically, you would see them in around the 80s, 90 range if you're counting New 52 market. But current market, you'd be lucky you get them in the 75 range.
Yes. So my point is, so DC saw this, and actually Charles Soule says, they canceled the series. They sabotaged the series and canceled it, not because of sales, not because it was popular with the fans, but because they didn't want it.
I will play devil's advocate. Not everyone was vibing with Super Wonder, especially when you already had Convergence, pre-Flashpoint Clark and Lois.
But here's the issue, though. Even with Rebirth, this Super Wonder, that if that's true, then why did the Rebirth Lois and Clark book and the Rebirth Superman book never reach anywhere near those sales?
I agree. There was some sabotage behind the scenes with Editorial. I'm not refuting that.
No. I know you're not.
I know. But at the same time, the only way that would have worked is if you rebranded. You either had Clark go play a Nick Fury type role and not be in the forefront as much, or what they ultimately did was merge the two. Now, you could try to rebrand Clark with Scion or another Kryptonian adjacent name in attempt
here's
to
an
make
idea.
it work.
Not bring in the old Clark at all, because judging by sales, it wasn't as popular as DC would like you to believe. I think, JHEAT, I think you muted. But that's ultimately my thing, because when you look at the book, it's like, all right. Oh, yeah, so JHEAT will be right back. But that's my point here. Because and this is not necessarily a Super Wonder thing. This is a thing for like a lot of different like projects. DC has stuff that's popular, and then they sabotage it severely, either intentionally or non-intentionally, such as, hey, after Metal, you had the Batman Who Laughs, and he was like the super. For those of you that somehow live under a rock, the Batman Who Laughs is a multiverse being. Which, what if Batman was Jokerized? Okay, sweet. And he was a very popular version. He was a very popular member of the Dark Knights of Barbados. Now, okay, what DC did is they literally put him in literally everything, even stuff that does not fit with him. He showed up in literally every single, practically every single book, to the point where you sabotage the Batman Who Laughs brand to the point where they had to kill him in death metal. You could say the plan was that, but I see no evidence of that. You also have like the new 52 itself, because basically with the reason why the new 52 is good is that it was a fresh starting on point for new readers. Now, what DC did to sabotage it is, okay, a couple of things. Number one, they put, so on Superman, you had George Perez, and on Action Comics, you had Grant Morrison. Okay, two fantastic creatives. The problem is that Action Comics was taking place 5 years before Superman. So what Grant was doing was going to affect what Perez was doing, and Grant was not talking to Perez and communicating. So this led to continuity, like inconsistencies between the two books. Then you also have the fact that they kept like all of Green Lantern and all of Batman that transferred over in the new 52, even though, okay, so the conceit is when we pick up in Justice League, every superhero has been a superhero for at least 5 years. Problem with that is that, okay, so Batman, so here's with Batman. Okay, so he became Batman. Got Robin. Dick Grayson not only became Robin, but also let him become Nightwing in 1 year. Then you had the Tim Drake backbreaking. You had the Jason Todd. There was like so much stuff they tried to cram into 5 years that it ended up being what?
And the biggest impact with New 52 is that they didn't want to be branded as an Ultimates ripoff. That's why New 52 wasn't an Elseworld story. Even though you easily could have made the argument it would have worked better because it was a blank slate.
Mm-hmm.
And it was its own thing and it wouldn't have touched, because I really see New 52 as more of a have your cake and eat it too type situation. Yeah. And it just didn't work. But to go back to Dick Grayson being Batman, the reason that works is because, one, Dick Grayson was able to grow into his own. B, you know for a fact he's just standing in until they inevitably resurrect or bring Bruce back. And C, it led to a new plethora of stories and a new dynamic duo with Dick and Damian. I should say Richard, because the bots are going to be all over the chat. Well,
it's not live, so it doesn't really matter. But and here's the thing on that too. Yeah, it led to great storylines. But how does that fit into 5 years? How does Final Crisis happen in the new 52 when important characters to Final Crisis don't exist in the new 52 universe? Same thing with Blackest Night.
There is such a thing as adjacent events, but the way they handled that whole situation was terrible. If you made Batman significantly older than the other Justice League members and say he was active over the course of 15, 20 years, maybe you could at least combine his. But that would have led to a, like Snyderverse, Batman, Dark Knight Returns type situation where Bruce is drastic.
Just don't have the time thing. Just have it start off in their careers and don't say this all happened in 5 years. No, don't even say that.
I feel like a lot of that was just throwaway lines, because how is the new status quo different from the new old timeline, and how we're not going to see these adventures anymore? I feel like a lot of that was just the marketing team just talking out of their butts.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that one, but I think it's another occasion of DC self-sabotaging a good idea. Or what they could have done, just start fresh and then retell a few of those stories that people want to see, but in a new way with like younger characters and such, because you could have approached it from a new angle. Because how would a younger Bruce Wayne react to having his back broken? How does Blackest Night work without the characters that fixed Blackest Night?
And And I will say, now I know this is going to be brought up in the comments, so I'm going to go ahead and say it now. The reason Wallace West or Ace West is different because he's just he's just synergy for the Flash CW show. That's literally all he is. You literally the issue is the fact that you tried to have him replace the actual original Wally West in the New 52, which made people mad. But if you had both from the start, the reaction would have been nowhere near as bad because Ace is actually, I feel, okay, they kind of ripped off James Gordon Jr. by making Ace's father a serial killer who just happens to get super speed. So they just ripped off James Gordon Jr. But it's completely different. It's not the same parentage as Wally has. So you could easily just have them be cousins or distant cousins, and no one would care in the grand scheme of things.
That's true. That's 100% true. And then, speaking of like new 52 and Rebirth, you know, Tabby is going to bring this up in the comments. We might as well address it. Okay, so they had a really popular Superman series with Tomasi and Gleason, where Superman raising his son and getting to be like the Jonathan Kent to his son, which was cool. It was a new situation for Superman. They were finally doing something new. Then Bendis comes in, and that's normally how a lot of these stories start. Then Bendis enters the book, and they let him completely railroad it.
That is true, but I'm not going to pin everything on Bendis because a lot of that was tie-in and set up for what Dan DiDio and Editorial was going to do for 5G. So it was a combination. Yeah, Bendis did railroad Tomasi and Gleason. I will not refute that. He did railroad because he would take the contract with DC. In exchange, he was given Superman. Now, I would never give Bendis and action. I would never give Bendis a cosmic or high caliber hero at all. No. I would keep Bendis grounded. That's what
or Batman, because remember he did that Walmart Batman series, which I've heard was actually really good.
Maybe, but I can't see current Bendis on a Batman book. That would just piss too many people off.
True, but and the issue is that and yes, I acknowledge that it was Editorial, but it's also Editorial sabotaging because they had a really popular Superman book, and they said, "Nah, we're gonna like undo a lot of this."
I really don't know how 5G got as far as it did. I will probably never be able to answer that question, no matter how much research I do. But ultimately, a lot of books fell off the deep end. Characters were assassinated, and just people were pissed off all across the wall. So I do feel like Dawn of DC or Dawn of DCU is a good course correct, but
that's what it seems to be. It seems like we're in this period where DC's like, okay, so let's end it. And here's some good news. When they like get a Clunrad off of Wonder Woman, okay, if Tom King performs well with Wonder Woman, we'll see. But it can't be worse than Clunrad. Let's face it, it can't be worse.
Writing one in terms of competence, it can't be worse.
Competence, because I think Tom King is a more competent writer than Clunrad, and plus Siempre, the artist for Dark Crisis. Hell yeah. Say what you want about Dark Crisis from a story perspective, but the art was awesome.
I'll give you that. But I will say this about what the pitch is for Dawn of DC Wonder Woman. It's essentially going to be a consequence of Revenge of the Gods and spoilers for the tie-in material if you haven't read it. But it's essentially how the gods are corrupted by the Lazarus. They go on a power trip trying to instill fear in humanity to regain immortality through worship, and they eventually resolve it, but the Amazons are branded as enemies of the state because of it. So it's a pseudo Amazons attack type situation.
Except better.
Yeah, I'll give you that. And Diana becomes a fugitive.
Which I like that. That's a new thing for Wonder Woman, because I don't think we've ever seen her be a fugitive.
She was essentially, she did have to step down from the mantle for killing Maxwell Lord, and she was a secret agent for a bit, but a lot of that was in the 90s.
And in the early 2000s, but we've never seen her actually hunted by the government. But the only problem I have with that idea is Wonder Woman has saved the multiverse many times, so you think they'd give Wonder Woman a pass.
Yeah, but you don't really get much drama if you do that. And yes, Diana did make the best out of a complex situation, but she had to know better not to trust Hera. Hera is a woman scorned over millennia.
Oh yeah. But what I am interested to see, if Tom King is smart enough to do this, how do the other members of the Justice League react to this? Do they hide her, or does Superman is Superman hired by the government to bring her in?
Because then, okay, you might as well just be ripping off Dark Knight's Return at that point.
Yeah, because it seems a lot like this plot is eerily similar to DKR.
But okay, we've covered Donna, DC, Wonder Woman.
Yeah, and and they've canceled the crappy Robin and Batgirl series. So again, it seems like these.
Okay, I'm just gonna say this. Batgirls was mostly just tween, like tween hijinks. You know, akin to like prepubescent to early teen young girls. Oh, Fitzmartin's terrible. I will not.
It seems that. DC has finally figured out that she is a bad investment.
That, and she was contracted just before the 5G drop into Dio's firing. So a lot of that was Fitzmartin due to being under contract. Mm-hmm. Personally, I would have kept her in her strong suit, which is YA novels. Have her crack out a few YA novels, fulfill her contract, and kick her out the door. That's what I would have done. Mm-hmm. But my issue with Fitzmartin is not so much incompetence, not so much this new generation of writers, because everyone has a chance to be creative. Everyone has a chance. Not everyone's going to like your work. But my problem with Fitzmartin is the fact that she had no class in the situation. She got heavy pushback from the Tim Drake change. And that's something, one, she's already a Tim Khan shipper, so she already showed objective bias, even if Editorial forced her to do it. But her reaction, she literally badmouthed on Twitter. And not only that, she made the Dark Crisis Young Justice as a cardinal sin no one can forgive.
I've heard horror stories. I've never read it because I want to save my soul. Don't read that
story. Only read that story if you're hell-bent on punishing your kid.
Trust me, I'm already at my wit's end trying to read Civil War 2.
Okay, I'm not going to say it's as bad as Civil War, but definitely...
It's not as bad, but... Definitely is convoluted.
There
are some severe issues with Civil War 2, and I'll say this on the stream. I think actually, but by the time this goes live, we will be streaming for that movie, and then we'll say more at 7 p.m. tonight, the day this goes up. But anyway, yeah, and I don't know. Watch it would be cool. My idea. By the way, what is interesting is that. Apparently, Joshua Williamson is doing a good job on Superman. So okay, they have Superman, and I've read the first issue; it's pretty solid. And Zdarsky's Batman is pretty good, even though Batman
it's got a little off the rails with this multiverse story. That's why I heavily believe we're not getting Dawn DC Batman till May, because it gives more time for Zdarsky to wrap his book up. Mm-hmm.
I will say another thing I think it's interesting that DC is trying, is putting the Teen Titans as the Justice League of the Earth for right now. Because we know the Justice League are coming back. Eventually. That's happening. But it's even though it's Tom Taylor's writing, I think I like when DC takes gambles. Because oftentimes, if done correctly, those gambles can be very good.
And pay off.
Exactly.
But I feel like Titans is not going to have a lot of momentum going for it, because even with Nightwing right now, a lot of those issues are either set up for Titans in May, or Nightwing just outright takes the spotlight. So I could easily just see this being the Nightwing show if not executed competently.
Probably, because remember, and Tom Taylor is the Nightwing writer as well.
So I could easily see this.
Which I've heard is pretty good.
It's decent. It drags. It really does drag. Especially once you get past the Rick Grayson saga. Okay, I just want something good. I don't care. Just don't drag it out. And the Rick Grayson saga was only supposed to last a couple of months. It was dragged out for almost 2 years.
All right, here's another thing. You mentioned that it drags. Okay, so there are times we can have a slice of life issue or two with these characters, but can we not have whole arcs that's just them hanging out eating pizza?
That's fair.
It's freaking annoying because when you're reading Nightwing, when you're reading Batman, when you're reading Superman and Wonder Woman, you're reading to watch them punch criminals in the face. That's the whole point of the big two superheroes. Stop giving me an entire... You can have, like, YA books where that happens, or an issue or two if you need some time to, like,
filler,
buffer out your story before, like, you get to, like, the main bad guy. But it is, like, way too much at this point.
And I feel like that's a shift in motivation with these writers. Now, I'm not going to go into agenda or anything like that, but I will say people value like rom-com type storytelling than anything action oriented. Even though these are superhero comics, so you would expect some kind of action. They sprinkle a little here and there because they have to, but I feel like if these writers were doing their own thing on indie, or if they were out doing like adjacent to manga and anime, where they were doing YAs, which is essentially America's version of anime and manga, they would just do some rom-com adventure type of deal, and
they
just
could.
do that.
And they did it to great success, except for I Am Not Starfire.
Okay.
I like to bring that up at practically every stream just to see JHEAT's reaction, because it's so fun.
No. I'm over it now. But it's just the fact that she was just a twat a lot of the times. I Am Not Starfire. Excuse me, but
okay. But anyway, the problem with I Am Not Starfire is that. Well, actually, I'm not going to talk about. I'm not going to take JHEAT's thunder. But my point is that they take these young adult books. They take these. They essentially take these ideas, because what they could do is take the young adult books, take the slice of our life books where it's like arcs and arcs and arcs and arcs, and then put that with the young adults, because that's what young adults go for ultimately, and keep the mainstream superheroes like. And keep that as 100%. Okay, you can have, again, some slice of life is fine for like a filler issue, but ultimately you can't afford the entire thing to be filler. It doesn't work because people jump off it. Hence, okay, Son of Kal-El. That series started off not bad entirely, but the problem with it is that it went too heavy into the slice of life drama style, in addition to Tom Taylor's to the writing that I personally did not enjoy, and it seems a lot of people did not enjoy. But the point is like with that story, because even Nerdette, because she enjoyed that story, but she was telling me, okay, I liked the story, but it went on for way too long before anything happened.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead. Thank you. Sorry, I had technical difficulties.
No, it's okay. It's all good.
But yeah, Son of Kal-El, it did like, okay, I'm not gonna go into God, I'm starting to sound like Tevia, but I have to say this for context. Son of Kal-El, say what you will about 5G and all that, it really was, and I got the thumbnail right here. Give me just a second, and I can go ahead and
yeah, go ahead.
Screen share this, because I am making a retrospective video on it.
Yeah.
But what I'm essentially saying is that, as the title implies, screen share.
It's technical difficulties, folks, and we are going to share that. Yeah, a shelf title gone bad. You know what's bad when it's a shelf title that's bad.
Pretty much. And the reason it's a shelf title is how does it impact? Is it referenced in other books? Does it have a larger impact in the line? I'll go ahead and remove this. Thank you.
Yeah.
Does it have anything of remote consequence that can impact the character in any way? If this was Jay Nakamura's book, you know, with the Resistance, then yes, I could see this actually engaging, actually having an impact. But that's not the namesake. That's not the IP or the hook of the comic. It's John Kent and how he steps up to Superman in Clark's absence. One, you already brought Connor back in Rebirth. You easily could have just used Connor and gone that route.
Mm-hmm.
You probably would have only satisfied the TimCon shippers, but that would have been a much more organic way of going about it.
And you don't even have to age him up because he's at that age already.
2, it did decent. Even with the coming out day and the publicity from issue 5, it did decent. It did like 75, 80,000, and then it just stagnated to the point where it was in the top 200. It wasn't even in the top 200. It just plummeted by issue 10. Yeah. So because it was boring. All we asked was for an action scene.
Yeah, you know, it's horrible when Tom Taylor himself, and I did a video about this, said that he's more heroic than Clark because he doesn't punch someone in the face.
And okay, just let me sure I understand this. You have a character who defined the literal genre you are in. One of the most iconic IPs of all time. One of his duels comics is called Action Comics, and you turn his successor into not only a pacifist, but your personal mouthpiece for 15 issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's pretty much the way it works, as a matter of fact.
No, I've seen books get canceled for far less, but I felt like I was reading one of Dan's Slott work. I said what I said.
Why did you say that, Dad?
Thank you. Because this is something Dan Slott would have done. Easy.
Didn't he try to do that with like Spider-Man's sidekick?
Twice.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of Spider-Man's sidekick, hold on, this just came in. I was going to save this, but no, this needs to be discussed.
Oh, yeah. I just saw it in the group chat. Oh, God. This is another occasion of Marvel trying to pick an idea that has repeatedly not worked and doing it.
Hold on. Technical difficulties, folks.
Yeah. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Okay.
Spider-Boy, ladies and gentlemen. Roll the clip.
All right.
Why did you say that, Dad?
Not that.
Which clip?
The one before the show.
I can't do that because that was too long. It's just too long.
The setup's gone. But yeah. But essentially, it's a Spider-Verse story featuring Spider-Boy. Now, say what you will about Miles Morales. He's technically a multiverse character that was carried over. But out of any derivative title you could have made, you picked virtually the worst option.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's why. You could have highlighted Miles. But no.
Remember the last time they did that with What If?
You mean It's Hammer Time? That hard. But the best part about that is everyone was pissed. Everyone.
Rightfully so, because it's blatant stereotyping.
Yeah, it's blatant that's actual racism right there, ladies and gentlemen. But it was so stupid. But no, they couldn't, because here's the problem with Miles, is that they could have given, I'm not saying call him Spider-Boy, 100% not, because because I think at this point he's proved himself as a hero that he doesn't have to be called Spider-Man. And he's only called Spider-Man because in his universe, he was the only Spider-Man. Peter died.
Now, there's an easy fix to this. Have Peter either retire or semi-retire. Still help out when there's big overarching events. But the main book, he settles down, he retires, and he just works on being an adult.
With Mary Jane. No matter what Marvel editorial will make you think. Oh, my gosh.
Peter MJ does work. The reason they didn't pair them back together, because it was literally an FU to Spencer, who left the book for that new comic publishing they were kicking off. Comic Stack? No.
Substack.
Substack, thank you. Because Spencer left for Substack. And so they literally just split Peter and MJ again as an FU to him. If
I were in charge of Marvel, I would assign Dan Slott to write the book where they get back together in continuity.
Hold on. Now, I know Dan Slott didn't write it one more day.
As a joke.
Oh, as a joke. Okay.
No, because he has on Twitter been very against them getting back together. So I'm like, okay, you're going to write it. That's your assignment. That's your assignment, dude. Hey, you could, and here's the thing, it's a compliment. You're a competent Spider-Man writer. I enjoy your Spider-Man stuff, so you could do it really well. I'm the dude that actually thinks Iron Man 2020 is not that bad.
Well, it was again, a lot of the Marvel just fell off because of what they did.
Have you noticed how most of Marvel stories are either decent or downright dog crap?
And I'll even say this. As a consequence of Civil War II, the only real problem with Riri Williams, other than the obvious inspiration,
How did they not Google that? Is what I want to know.
Other than the obvious inspiration is the fact that Riri Williams under Bendis was a textbook narcissist, not a witty, not a jack. Okay,
not a Tony Stark narcissist.
No, don't get it twisted. Tony can be a narcissist, but a lot of that comes with being a head of a conglomerate and philanthropy. So he's willing to charm or play his way out of those.
And being a tech guy that practically can build anything for any issue,
and can back up the smack that he talks.
Yeah, have you seen how many Buster suits he has to take out every member of his friends? He's Batman in that way. He has the contingency plans.
Now, granted, Tony does have narcissistic tendencies, but he's more of a jackass than anything when he's off the bottle. But that's a separate conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
But Riri Ironheart didn't get better as a character until someone else took them over, and I believe it was the Champions book. And Thanos just beat the crap out of her.
Isn't that ironic? And Comic Drake made an interesting comment. Isn't it kind of funny how whenever Bendis tries to bring in a new character to represent someone else, which totally fine with that, that's great. Have you noticed that the character is always better written and embraced when he's not writing?
Because Bendis isn't writing for the right reasons. Now, there's nothing wrong with appealing to multiple groups and representation.
Absolutely not.
As a concept,
and at least they made up new characters for that.
We'll commend them. Round of applause. We'll commend them.
Even Kamala Khan. Let me put it this way. I don't like her comics, but I like her in the MCU.
Not to mention she was a blatant self-insert of her creator who was even almost as big of a narcissist as Mindy Kaling. Nope.
Yeah, exactly. But my point is that there's no such thing as a terrible character. There's just terrible writers writing that character. Like JHEAT said earlier, every character has the potential. Dreamer could be like the next big thing.
Easily.
Ironheart could be the next big thing. It doesn't. All it comes down to is the creative staff. And ultimately, here's the thing: the reason why these characters haven't been like that embraced and pushed is because Marvel and DC refuse to put their top tier writers, guys and girls that actually have the chops to back it up, to put them on these characters. Because
a lot of them are blacklisted for having political opinions. Remember 2016 and that election, and everyone lost their goddamn minds?
Either man Skyver.
A lot of them.
What they should do. Here's what they could do: put one of these characters on the Justice League and or Avengers. Because then what you do is you get a larger audience for that brand. And then because that's how I got into all these different characters. I read the team book because I figured there's a sampling of them. Then I can pick the characters I like more. And plus, if she's on a brand, if like say they put Dreamer on the Justice League, that way she's exposed to a larger audience beyond the ones that book is meant for.
Exactly.
That's the problem. They're keeping these characters in the book that's supposed to represent the audience, which is fine. They're allowed to have their own series, but I'm saying if you want that character to become more represented, you have to also put her in other books. At least, here's the good part. She debuted in the Son of Kal-El book in terms of the comic. So at least they're putting her in a book called Superman. So
yeah, and giving her some momentum. But technically the issue Dreamer debuted in was a filler issue.
No, but still, I'm saying they're putting her in an issue titled Superman. So they're putting her in a book that they know is going to get at least some eyes, even though at that point the book was kind of falling off. But my point is, you put them in a book, have them get guest star for like an issue or an arc, put them in like a book where they essentially benefit from the increased eyes. Look at Batwoman. She was in Batman for so long because Batman sells books, and Batman has the largest comic audience of the big two, not just DC, of Marvel as well.
You could argue Spider-Man succeeds Batman in sales, but it's always been back and forth.
It's kind of funny how during the Tom King run, the Hulk outsold Batman.
Oh, come on. Immortal Hulk was fantastic.
Because you had Immortal Hulk. I'm not bashing Immortal Hulk. I'm just saying in terms of IP name recognition, the Hulk. Because I'll be the first to tell you, Immortal Hulk is freaking awesome.
I wouldn't call it Planet Hulk or World War Hulk, but Immortal Hulk was pretty good in its own right.
Yeah, it'll be this way. It's solid. I will get it is solid. It's like the Ed Brubaker Captain America run. It is solid. Which,
I
if we
agree.
want to talk about another run that we will be talking about on Comics League eventually, is the Ed Brubaker Captain America run. We need to. We'll probably cover that near the Captain America New World Order movie release, because I think that's probably taken some inspiration from that.
I agree, but in essence, Marvel has fallen off a cliff because a lot of what All New, All Different was supposed to do was establish a precedent for these mantle swaps in conjunction. Because the way Marvel has it set up, the comics are promotional material for the films,
Now,
and to better entice the MCU brand. So a lot of the mantle swaps in that initiative were for, in the event that these actors don't renew their contracts, something happens to them, or they walk away.
Mm-hmm.
Robbie Downey Jr. and Chris Evans are a perfect example of this. So go ahead.
That was one of the times DC outsold Marvel, because what was DC doing? Rebirth.
Yes, but they have a completely different business model, because now that the MCU is falling apart, they have no real cushions to fall back on. And you can't really write off the Disney IP because they're getting constant backlash.
And what's interesting is that, remember, Marvel Entertainment has now been absorbed into Disney. So I'm wondering, what does that mean for the comics?
I mean, Disney doesn't really keeps Marvel separate from, because Disney's mostly about the Mickey Mouse, the cartoons, princesses, stuff like that.
But now there's less of a divide than there was before.
I agree.
And we will be talking about that on Comics League Dark, which actually will be out on the channel now, because
it'll be around the same time we go live. It'll be around the same time.
Yeah, exactly. But the point is that I think, see, here's the thing. Now, you mentioned Marvel has fallen off a cliff. Now, the question is, even with the MCU failing, is it too late for them to get back up?
Now, they've never done a full-scale Crisis on Infinite Earths type reboot. They've altered and restored the universe but they've never done a full wipe the slate clean. There's too much history, unless you're counting Ultimates, which was just a glorified Elseworld.
The Ultimates War, the storyline that's coming out with Hickman, could be that.
It could, but we don't know too many details about it. It's supposed to be a summer blockbuster event that kicks off this May. So we just don't know a lot of details on that.
It's Jonathan Hickman, so either way, we're getting a solid story.
It might.
You know what I'm saying? Either way, we're getting a solid story. So I'm like,
okay.
Yeah, I want Hickman to come to DC and write the Justice League.
He'll never do it.
But how great would that be?
I would say Hickman on Titans.
That could work too.
But I will say this is what happens when synergy goes bad. And I will always use this as an example. Teen Titans Rebirth with Benjamin Percy and Adam Glass. Now, the Percy run was not that bad. It was mostly just a retread of the Decamu with Damian Wayne in the context of the main comics canon. You know, Damian just being a jackass.
Mm-hmm.
So that one wasn't really too bad. But then after Justice League No Justice and everything setting up for Metal Wars and Perpetua, Dark Knight's Metal and Perpetua, Teen Titans Rebirth became essentially an afterthought because of the way it ended. Mm-hmm. So they rebranded the comic but again, it was a shelf title with its only real impact is Damian's fall from grace, and was essentially going to be his turn to evil in 5G. And that's how you get into the City of Bane and Death of Alfred, which at least in my personal opinion, the only reason they didn't kill off Nightwing is because Injustice did it first.
Yeah, because then it'd be like, oh no, we're getting to Injustice now. This is not good.
And I understand what they were trying to do, because they have some stories had to be told for consistency purposes if you weren't going to abandon 5G altogether. So I do understand some of that, but the damage has been done to the point to not only Batman is your only sellable IP, but you're starting to oversaturate the use of that character.
Yeah, I'm like, when you have 80 Batman books, then it's some of them are in continuity, some of them are not. You know, you're messed up, because eventually that Batman bubble is gonna burst.
And I definitely feel like this course correct was necessary. You would think Infinite Frontier was redundant because all it set up was Dark Crisis. No, Infinite Frontier and Future is what Future State should have been. Just a brief experiment, just a year-long experiment, trying to get all the contracts and commissions that were essentially going to be 5G out of the way. But I think this was due to a change in studio. They originally pitched for 2 months. Then they would kick off Infinite Frontier. And then they kept doing the same thing they've been doing, and it dragged on again because they were still trying to set up Dark Crisis. I feel like if you had dropped Future State and focused on Infinite Frontier from the start, the whole aspect would have been better appreciated. Would have appealed a lot better.
It would have. And also, okay. And what DC has to do, because here's the thing: to make Infinite Frontier work, they have to figure out a way to cool it on the events. And just get back to publishing good stories, which the potential is there. You have the you put in competent creatives on the right books, like Joshua Williamson on Superman,
Jeremy Adams.
To be determined if it's Tom King on Wonder Woman. But didn't they cancel the Adams Flash run?
They're wrapping. Excuse me. They're going to wrap it up with the 800th milestone issue. And then Jeremy Adams going to lead the book. But where he goes afterwards, I don't know. I want to say he's working on Green Lantern, but I can't confirm that right now.
The only ding I'll give is that they still haven't just told Tom Taylor, you're writing only Elseworld stories now, because that's where you really shine. That's it. You're done.
But, okay, I will play devil's advocate, because he was balancing. He was originally going to be scripting DC's 3. Then he had to do Son of Kal-El to wrap that up before it inevitably gets canceled. And he was working on Nightwing all at the same time. So I feel like this dip in quality with Tom Taylor is largely due to burnout, because he's balancing a successful limited event series, a shelf title, and one of the biggest IPs outside of the Trinity and or Justice League all at the same time.
And or Harley Quinn, but that's excessive. But yeah, so that's why, hey, the potential is there. He could wow me. Tom Taylor could legit, because he has done in the past. Tom Taylor has basically, a lot of these writers have wowed me in the past, so it's not impossible for it to happen.
And I forgot, Dark Knights of Steel came out this week. That book's keep getting buried in delays. I think it's now a bi-monthly release at this point, because Dark Knights of Steel keeps getting delayed. It's almost at the end now, but still. I think issue 10 was delayed for 2 months back to back.
Which, I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. But I think it's a good place to leave this episode. We gave some interesting suggestions. Drop in the comments what you think the largest issues are, pun intended, by the way, with DC and the mainstream comic book industry. Tevi, I know you're going to say Super Sons. More power to you, because that's that's part of this conversation. So, JHEAT, what have you got coming out on your channel?
Well, I got the Tim Drake redundancy video, which is going to be kind of like a prequel to the Night Owl aspect we were talking about. If it could work as a new superhero name for Tim and how I would contextualize it. And then, of course, the John Kent retrospective. Hopefully I can get Tevi on the show that day when I set that up. And more Soul Tours. So again, you'll see me on CLD. You'll maybe see me on Friday Night Frenzy once Nick starts that up again. Just more content for myself, my friends here, and Comics League in general.
So for me, on Monday, I have a video coming out where I'm deciding between two, where I do an in-depth discussion on the Fortress of Solitude, or an in-depth discussion on the effect that Jonathan and Martha Kent had on Superman's upbringing, thus negating the argument that Superman needs Lois in order to be human. In terms of Indie Wednesday, I'm reviewing Volume 3 of Undiscovered Country by Scott Snyder. Solid book. I love it. And obviously, by the time this goes live, I would have watched Justice League live, so you can find it on the channel. But also, at 7 p.m., at the time this is going out tonight, we will be doing our April Fool's stream, where JHEAT is covering Marvel.
I thought we were saving that for tomorrow night.
No, I'm saying by the time this is uploaded, because this is coming out on Saturday.
Okay. I get it now.
JHEAT is reviewing Marvel and and Superman 4. The concept is we have to take we each were assigned a comic book story that at the others know we hate, a comic book story and movie, and we have to positively review it. Taladia has actually a movie and a series, I believe. He's reviewing Gotham Knights.
Wait, the game or the TV show?
TV show. Nick is reviewing Captain Marvel, which if you've seen his live tweets, he hated it. It was so good. And he's reviewing, I forget exactly. For some reason, I keep forgetting which comic.
Original Sin with Gwen Stacy.
No, I think we changed that because that would be a little too crazy for this channel. And I'm reviewing Civil War 2 for comics, which I'm like, and Justice League. So that's where I'm going with that. It should be really fun. It should be interesting. And that's what we got. So stay heroic, everyone. I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.